Hello and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, together with my co-host, Bethany Ruff.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back to the show. It has been girl power up in here recently. This is awesome. We have another amazing guest to introduce to you right now. Shun Foreman is a registered nurse and one of 5 founders of SUGARx GLOBAL. Along with her career in nursing that has lasted over 2 decades, she also has a degree in human rights and social justice. With these qualifications, she is in a unique space to understand how sugar has impacted the African American community. Since completing Bitter Johnson's sugar certification, she has been able to effectively communicate her message around sugar awareness and empowering communities of color to rise above the misinformation and to get to a place of healing. Shun Foreman, it is an absolute honor to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Yay! I'm so honored to be here, Casey and Bethany. Thank you for the invitation. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. It's an absolute honor. You are calling in from Texas, is that correct?
That is right. Dallas, to be exact.
Gotcha, Dallas. So yeah, you really went through it with that last ice storm that we had. Like, holy cow, that was crazy.
I know. It was real. I mean, it's just like, I know where you are, you might be quite used to the snow, but we're not so used to the snow and ice down here. So it was a madhouse for for a week. It was a madhouse. So, yeah.
We're a little bit more used to it. Doesn't mean that we like it. And, there was that snowstorm in Atlanta that happened, a few years ago, and like they had to shut down the city, and there was really funny memes that went around about it. But in Texas, that was a totally different situation. I mean, first it was extreme cold and then all the pipes bursting. Like, that's nuts.
Yep. And
wow.
we were part of that too. We just got in line with everybody else and still waiting on repairs and drying. So yep, we got in line with that. So yep.
The last 14 months will at least show you can pretty much deal with anything, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. You try to, right? I feel like I'm grateful for really like just being sugar free, because I can think back to a couple of years ago when things were not so sugar free for me. Everything was a challenge, talking to my kids about what they were going to wear or not wear was a challenge. And now it's just, I feel like life is just so much better, like my mental space, my physical being, I feel stronger, have more stamina. And I'm just grateful, because I know, like, for me as a nurse with COVID, I just think it's taken a toll on all of us. But it for me, like, just I know that I can attribute my strength to like my journey with my food, so it's a big thing for me.
Wow. Well, we are just so grateful for you and all the other essential healthcare workers out there who are just really going through it through this past year. And we're so fortunate to be taken care of by you guys and know that we're in good hands if we ever need you. So you mentioned your journey through life and, on the other side of maybe like a sugar addiction. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you grew up and what that was like?
Well, I am originally from Tyler, Texas. You may know it. People know Tyler for a couple of things, either the Roses or either Earl Campbell. So I am very proud East Texan, and that's where I grew up. My dad, to be exact, he actually was a self-employed rose grower, and I think I kind of grew up like most African Americans in my community, or maybe most people, across the board in our income bracket, And so for me, I have 2 older brothers, and it was just good, like life was good. My parents allowed me to sort of express my imagination in ways that I think that helped to frame who I am today. One thing in particular is like my mom, I always used to think that they were field trips for some reason, but every weekend, it seems like the weekends were full of, I just thought, literally, I'm serious. I thought they were field trips because we would either go to a funeral or a funeral home or a nursing home or a hospital or visit someone that was older in their home. And the strange thing is, it became really natural for me to sort of help people and really just learn how to help people with nonverbal skills. Like if they were grunting, I knew that was maybe that it meant discomfort. If they were reaching for something, I knew that they needed something. So I began to pick up a lot of nonverbal skills, with just communicating and caring for people, just because what I think were back then were field trips.
Wow.
And then I really, that imagination, my mom also just allowed that to flourish in really in in my bedroom. I grew up in a house that was, we used it as a 2-bedroom home, but it's really a 1-bedroom home. And I shared the rooms with my brother. But whenever they were out, I just had this whole complete fascination with teaching my dolls. I, for some reason, could turn my little section of the room into a classroom, and I would just line my dolls up and just really work with them. I literally make their quizzes and grade their papers. And if they needed any tutoring, I'd keep them behind, and tutor them. And the weird thing is, I don't know how it happened, but in my brain, I think because I had seen enough in the hospital, I remember one of my little dolls getting sick, and I took my doll and I literally turned that place, that then classroom, into what was a hospital. I took a Ziploc bag and I filled it like halfway full with water. And then I took a needle and a thread and I taped that Ziploc bag up to that needle and thread. And then I used the needle to literally insert it inside my baby's arm. And I remember my mom walking in the room at that time, and I remember her just looking, she just literally looked at me and she literally walked out. And I think, to me, like, if she would have said something, I think it probably would have stunted my imagination or my ability to think that I'm going to help someone. But I think her silence to me just said, you know what, I agree. You keep going and you keep doing whatever you're doing.
Wow.
Little did I know that was going to turn into me wanting to be a nurse and really having a deep passion to educate. That the education piece has, it's kind of weird, because I think that was kind of driven on the fact, not that I people might not know it, but I really struggled in school. I would have to reread things several times, and just my attention span was just really, really short. But that willingness to teach was sort of like me really being, I think, in the same type of hell that, my students were in, or at least the way I imagined at that time. So I kind of like to think that that's probably the same reason why I'm a nurse today too, is because I just felt like, I wanted to help people that were in the same type of hell that I was in, because diabetes was nothing to me. Hypertension was nothing to me. Those were things that were very clear, and maybe even thought that we were just gonna come across it and have it, So, yeah.
It was already that pervasive in the community.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And then, even thinking back to just dental caries, that was just, or cavities, I should say, that was normal, to have cavities. And the way I think of it now is like, oh my gosh, like now that I think about sugar the way I do, I'm like, gosh, that was the first sign of that your body is not tolerating this whole, whatever you're eating, it's not tolerating it. Your teeth were the things that were showing you what was going on. But yeah, so, and I think, in my household, we were, I shouldn't say typical. Now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, it was rice, and sugar on rice, and corn and sugar on corn, and, everything pretty much had sugar on it. I mean, what are you going to drink? Kool-Aid with extra sugar, and then, protein was there, but it was not, it was just a source, right? Just a small source. And by the time you add on two carbs plus sugar, and the drink is loaded with sugar, then you're pretty much an addict before you know it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember growing up and like the Kool-Aid and you're literally like cups of sugar in this Kool-Aid. I would get cavities all the time and
Mhm.
they would keep trying to like seal my teeth. I remember it's so funny. I haven't thought of this in so long, but they would try to put some kind of like sealant on my enamel. And even at that age I was like, why do we need this? This doesn't seem right. It's so
Right.
weird. Wow.
Yep.
That's so
Yeah.
interesting. So when did you start to realize that sugar was an actual, like, it was causing some of the problems that you were seeing around you?
It's kind of weird because I never really thought about sugar as a problem until I went to graduate school for human rights and social justice. And my reason for going back to school for that degree and sort of veering off from the nursing path was just because there were so many things that intersected with I'm going to say it like I mean it, with my Black life. It was at the peak of Trayvon Martin. And, after that, we can name all of the other names that really helped me to just understand that, you know what? I'm in a unique space as a Black woman. I'm married to a Black man who I sort of have to be an advocate, but also a coach for. I'm raising these two beautiful Black young women. And my dad is a Black man. My brothers are Black men. And, then when I even looked at it even further, I'm like, okay, as a Black woman, I am paid less than, my counterparts. And then when I look at just health, sickness, and disease, it's all connected. So my goal was really just to go back and say, I really want to try to find the sweet spot for me to say, I know that human rights and social justice and healthcare, I know they intersect, but I actually didn't know like what that was going to look like until I got to the end of school. And I had 1 year to work on a thesis. And for me, it became really clear when I started doing the thesis. At that time, I really thought I was just going to do something that maybe everybody does a paper about is African Americans and diabetes. But then a couple of things just started coming to me as it relates to sugar. One was we were in Sugarland, Texas, and we were dropping off my daughter for a camp, and we were down there at the same time that they were exhuming the bodies of 95 Black uh, Black people who were bodies that were basically of the convict leasing system. And so that story became really intriguing to me. But also just the fact that we were in Sugarland. And my husband's just like, why do you think it's Sugarland? And I was like, there's a history, right? And it really just sparked my attention and say, you know what, let me dig into this and see if there's a little bit more to it. So I circled back and found a way to get in touch with a local historian who knew so much about the story of convict leasing. And he showed me around, and he really, it, it, it really motivated my learning in the way that I needed it, because I'm such a toucher. I've got to touch history. I've got to see history. You can't just like tell me that in a book and then I get it, right? Because that's not an experience. That's just me reading. So when I talked to him and he showed me where the former prison was, and he showed me where the graveside was, it really made me think a lot harder and deeper about sugar. So at that point, I knew I was going to do a paper on sugar and African Americans. I really thought I was going to kind of stick with that. And I still had to try to figure out that healthcare piece. And then another thing was that I entered my just did some paperwork, and I was just like, let me turn it in and see if the school might sponsor me to go to see the sugar plantations down near New Orleans. And they did. And so, but I spent Christmas there, a Christmas break there. And like when you go to a plantation and you're okay, these are sugar plantations. Okay, there are tours. Okay, I see the master's narrative. Okay, but what about mine? What about like my story? Like, because I know like we were here. And yes, there are places that will give you something, but it's like, God, that's a lot of work and
Wow.
no real credit. And it dawned on me, like, I was like, damn, like sugar ain't never been good for us. If we can't attach to it, with like the industry sort of recognizing our humanity as we are today, like, and that we built that industry up, then we've got a problem. So that really, it really, really, I'll say, sparked my behavior as it relates to sugar, but it was just on the surface. I was kind of pissed off about table sugar. I was pissed off if I saw sugar on the back of, a label, and I'm like, I'm not eating it. I'm not drinking it,
Wow.
because it had sugar in it. So I sort of used like what I like to say now is spite to really just be like a positive thing for me and to change my behavior.
Mm.
But a little bit after that, I graduated and the paper's done, and that's done. And then I had to figure out, well, I can't leave sugar alone. Like that's that's not it. And so it was then that I sought out Benton Johnson's program. And that was a 1-year certification of just like, oh my God. Like, you mean to tell me this is like we always say it's addictive, right? But who says that it's really addictive? Like I've said that a long time, girl, I'm addicted to this Dr. Pepper, or whatever. But I never really thought about it in the way that it was truly making a change in my body
Mm.
until I went through her program. And if we fast forward to today, I was like, you know what? There's no way in hell I'm going to have this type of joy and isolated just to myself and my family and try to keep that awareness just for them. It's something I've got to share in the community.
That's
So
amazing.
that's where we are today.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, I can't even imagine how powerful it would have been for you to be there and, actually at the plantations and to see that. I can't imagine how impactful that would have been on you and your, you know, emotional, ties to sugar, and to see that must have been pretty deep of an experience.
Yeah, it's so weird because I explain them as there are internal tears that I just can't cry. Like I can't put them out. But I knew I had to do something with it. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't just walk away for the sake of people who had a lifespan of 5 to 7 years if they were committed to sugar work, or that knowing that out of the 12 million or so Africans who were enslaved, that 70% of them went to sugar colonies. And just as a great Texan, East Texan, I really have just always connected and thought like if I had to go back and look at, find out what my ancestors did, I just assumed that it would be cotton. I never even thought about
Right.
the fact that it could be sugar,
Right.
So yeah, I use sort of like for me the change, and I'll the change for me is now we're talking about 53 or 54 pounds off of me.
Wow.
Yeah, and for my husband, he's around 80. Y'all, I don't know what y'all do to make it make it so simple, but anyway, he's like about 84 pounds down.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's incredible.
What were the first things that you noticed with just your overall state of being, your mental state, emotional state, and physical state after reducing or going off of sugar?
Yeah, you know what? After the initial just saying, okay, I'm going to stop, and then maybe going through a day or two of the headache and stuff, it's just like, we're talking about that I struggled as a student. I mean, I made good grades because I tried really hard and I'd have to stay up really late. But the mental clarity and just, I was like, you know, small things like how to prioritize what bill I'm going to pay first. Or, hey, how about this? How about you get out of freaking debt? You know what I'm saying? Just it was like I think they maybe talk about it like it's the executive, high level executive functioning. It's really like that. It tapped into that. And it was just like, I don't even deal with like cruddy thoughts anymore. Like, yeah, I think we all deal with like, how do I look in the mirror today? Should I brush my hair to the left or to the right? But yeah, that's not even a big thing as it is for me that I feel very clear about my objective when I walk into a room. I don't have that, like I'm intimidated by people, their thoughts and what they may think of me, which I was very caught in that world before. But, as a long term effect, we're talking about that I am going back to who I am. I am a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a wife, I'm a mother. And so all of those people around me are getting the best Shun, the best version of Shun, mentally, physically, they're getting the best of me, which I'm glad I can give it now, and so and then with exercise, that's the that's the piece that I couldn't believe because I had never, let's just say I felt like I needed to do the treadmill or to walk or whatever before, but I was doing it and hurting, your your joints and your feet, and it's like, God, I mean, I'm trying to do it, but I can't. But now I can do that, and I don't have all of that pain anymore. I don't have a bottle of Advil sitting on my desk waiting to pop the next one when the time is, right. So
It's
yeah,
amazing. That's so
yeah,
valuable. Nothing that sounds like it could replace the just overall better state of well-being, and being able to show up for the people around you is fantastic. It's so hard to notice what fog you're living in until you completely cut it out and you're on the other side. It's pretty amazing.
so true, so true.
Mm, that's awesome. I'm so glad you mentioned the movement piece. I don't think a lot of people realize how damaging sugar is as far as like aches and pains. So I'm really glad you said that. We use an analogy. I don't know who we stole this from. I can't remember. Maybe Bethany will recall, but we will tell people like if you mix, a cup of sugar in a cup of water and kind of mix it around, and then you have another bowl and you mix a cup of flour and a cup of water and mix that around, and then on another one you have like oil and water, you kind of mix that around. If you put your hand in the first bowl with the sugar, it's going to be really sticky, and it's going to grab, and it's going to like be kind of icky. The second bowl of the flour is going to be more like gummy, and it's not going to move very well. It's going to almost like feel like dough, where the last one you'll put your hand in and maybe feel like your hand is almost like lubricated, and you can like move it so much better. And I think the same thing happens inside our bodies, don't you?
Yeah, I do. And it's so weird because until you really start, for me, the way I think about things is just like in layers and categories. I'm like, this is a whole freaking circulation problem. It really has to do with circulation. Like when we talk about and it's really like it attacks those small vessels. This is me. This is what I think. It attacks those small vessels that are like the feeder to the bigger things, like the small vessels that are feeding the roots to my teeth, well, okay, it's attacking that first, it's gonna, that's why the tingling toes, the neuropathy of the eyes, that I think because those vessels are so small, that's what's under attack first. And then of course, over time, that sludgy blood is going to create the plaque in the system, in the circulatory system, then creating, the clots, which is going to lead to a heart attack or a stroke. So yeah, I think, yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, we totally agree with you. What other conditions do you think you notice around the community around you with an increase of sugar consumption?
We have to go back and just really talk about obesity. I think that's the first. I look at the complications of sugar or the consequences of sugar consumption, right? Over consumption. So overweight, you know, high cholesterol, hypertension, diabetes. The researchers already know if you have too much sugar in your system, that's what it's going to lead to. And so, and I didn't know until a couple of years ago that the American Heart Association had those recommendations out there for a woman.
Mm.
25 milligrams a day. For a man, 36 grams a day.
Wow.
And to know that that was out there, and it's been out there since I think 2008 or 2009, but that's useful information. If you can get down to 25 or 36, you and I both know you pretty much kick sugar,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah.
Wow. Definitely. Why do you think it's so hard to find that information? Why isn't that more easy to find?
Hmm. That is a really good question. I'm just gonna say that my thinking is that I really didn't think sugar was that big of a problem, you know, and so why would I look for that as a healthcare professional?
Mm.
Because the doctors will tell you, okay, you need to move around more, you need to eat less, you know, and if you're lucky, you might see something on a discharge paper that may say avoid sugar. But what does that really mean when you're reading something like avoid sugar? Well, okay, there's so many different types of sugar. And just because and I think in layman's term, people, especially in my community, we're looking at table sugar. We're not thinking about like high fructose corn syrup, right? So, and that those sugars are very different in the way that our body responds.
Mm.
So, so I think it's just like when we look at awareness, like that's a big thing. Like we've got to start at the bottom, and just like we teach our kids about drugs and alcohol. There should be a sugar awareness, right?
Yeah.
So I think just because probably the information is out there, but it's simple and it sounds simple, but and then you really lead people to sort of have to get into that, having to read labels and to do a little bit more work with the simple information that you've given to them.
Mm.
So, but I also think too that you know food is just it's so easy to be a problem and no one notices it unless you become overweight or unless your health is impacted. Because, the way I look at it, when we get sick, that's the first thing we want to do. I'm going to cut back. I'm going to stop eating. Well, that's not just we don't just do that because we want to. That's a natural, like we know that it's something that we've done wrong, something that we've eaten wrong to try to change, the way things move as we go forward in life. But so I think it's just a lot of things. We can look at the industry and just say, well, it's a lot of marketing, but a lot of it too is just still like we could also market the awareness a little bit better too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's so many, I mean, even just different names of sugar. There's what, 60, 70 different names
Yeah,
of
he's 70. Yeah,
things,
I think so.
70. Wow. Of things that you can say, well, this isn't sugar, but this is agave and this is high fructose corn syrup or, all kinds of other things. I think it does get so confusing for people. You did mention the high fructose corn syrup. How does that work differently than say table sugar, like you mentioned before?
Yeah. So the way I've learned is that high fructose, when it gets into your body, first of all, your body just doesn't recognize it. Much like, we're talking about glucose and then we've got fructose, that your body at least recognizes if it's 50-50. But when you get up to high fructose, you're talking about at least the 55% fructose, right? So it gets inside of your body. First thing it's going to do is get into your gut. That part that is going through the system is going to go to your liver. It's going to create fatty liver because that's just that's part of the process. That's what it's going to do. That part that doesn't go to the liver is going to spill over into the bloodstream, then creating fat onto your body, then creating plaque into the system, which is then going to lead to, like I said, the buildup of things that can lead to heart attack and stroke. So it's weird. Like I never really thought about it. Like I didn't think that the sugar that was in my Dr. Pepper was any different than my table sugar, because whenever you go to the dentist, you would see those little, kind of like little plastic bags next to Mountain Dew or the little plastic bag next to the apple juice, and they were always like table sugar. You know, that's
Mm.
just the way I've learned about sugar. But I did not know that my body was going to process high fructose very differently than just regular table sugar.
Mm. Interesting.
So, yeah.
Mm. You mentioned the addiction piece, and Gary Taubes talks about this quite a bit, where he says, he uses a quote, I think it's by Charles Mann, that's like, whether sugar is addictive or whether everybody just acts like it is, what's the difference? Like why does sugar become an addictive substance for people?
I think it's just everywhere. It's cheaper. It's easier. It's faster. I mean, it's everywhere. And and I, and then let's be honest. I mean, it's good. When we talk about something like a pancake or whatever, I mean that is that there it's good. But then when you start thinking, okay, well that's now I have to know the difference between like food and fuel.
Mm.
What fuels my body, what's food, and some people may not have like really like, the privilege really, if we look at it and be honest, to discriminate, but or just decipher between the two. A
Mm.
bag of chips may be considered food to somebody for the day.
Yeah.
And and trying to find kale that may be, or a kale salad may be a little bit more difficult and more expensive.
Mm. Yeah, that's so
So
interesting. Is that something that you notice in communities of color?
I think it is. I kind of have been struggling with the term food deserts, and I just not struggling with it because I think that is true. But I think like to add to the conversation or the dialogue, we probably need to talk about fuel deserts because there's plenty of food around. I mean, you go to an African American community, there's lots of places to eat, but they're not fueling anyone's bodies. But if you go to different sections of cities, and you may find true fuel food. And so I think that's yeah, I think it's a thing, but I think it's just one of those things we just need to add to the dialogue. Just let's look at it for what it's worth. All food ain't food, and let's say this is either going to fuel your body or either it's just food where you're putting it in there and your body's going to figure out what to do with it, which is probably going to become fat or a problem later on with your with the disease or disorder.
Mm.
So.
In your opinion, is that the best way to address the problem? Is just get the dialogue going, or how are we going to fix this? How are we going to get past this and do the right thing? Like, what steps do we need to take?
Yeah, I think we, it's just not like one group working on it. I mean, there's several groups that are going to have to work on it and at least agree on some terminology around how do we fix our food problem, especially in communities of color. Um, but I think it really is going to have to take, because there's so many things that intersect with how we eat. We've got, church, and we've got schools, and we've got entertainment. So, I mean, that's a lot of work and a lot of people working in different places, in different spaces. But I think it's just going to have to take like a multidisciplinary approach to really get us healthier,
Mm.
or at least know the difference between what is right for your body and not,
Right. Right. For sure. I think with sugar, it's tough because, you can take that out, but then it's like you said, you need to eat something. So what are some of the better things that people should be focusing on to, to eat more of rather than just eating less sugar?
Yeah, I think more, and this is hard to ask people to do, but it's more real food, more prepped food, like from your home. So that's the thing that's helping me, because the out to eat as much as I want to is not, that doesn't work for me because it's going to make me want something that I don't need. So really it's just distinguishing like the right fruits and vegetables that I can put into my body without them breaking down and being, like a sugar problem for me. The potatoes and things, that's a, that's, if I do it, it's like, I honestly have to really think really hard about it. And then I had to think the other day, I said, do I really want to pay for that? Like, do I want to pay for that? Because I know I'm going to have a headache or something right after I try to eat something that's not right for my body now. So I really think it's just, really just knowing like the whole foods, the foods that are nutrient packed. We need that kind of stuff in our bodies versus things that have been processed for us to want more and more and more and more.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Does eating a whole foods diet have to be cost prohibitive?
I don't think it has to be as expensive as it is. I really don't. I like to say if you're like cooking in like batch, when you batch cook, it's better, because at least you've got meals sort of that you can plan out and work through. But if you're just going for, like a meal or the night, then yeah, I think that's a more expensive way to do it. But um, I don't think it's that hard. I
Mm.
think it's just knowing, hey, these are the things that I can play with in my kitchen,
Yeah, sure.
or these are the things that are on my list, and that's what I'm going to have to just make a meal out of. And it's really like forcing me to be creative, and to do a little bit more. And honestly, my husband too, he's cooking more,
That's
which
great.
is great. Because I thought I was the one that could cook, and he's actually a better cook than I am. So,
It's a good
but
system.
yeah, and you get to, it kind of forces you to think about the traditional roles too. Look, what made me think I had to cook all the time,
Sure.
and so yeah, it's sharing those responsibilities, which is a good look for a couple that's just trying to make it,
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's really awesome. I have a question about him learning how to cook. We find that it can be so difficult to get somebody eating the right foods when they don't have the basic skills in the kitchen to even cook. So what things do you recommend for somebody that maybe didn't get that experience and get that learning of this is how you make food taste good at home?
So you can never go wrong with just straight up. We don't use like regular salt, table salt anymore. It's like the sea salt or Himalayan salt or something like that. Never go wrong with salt and black pepper. You can, you can bake almost anything. I've pretty much figured out you can bake anything. You can wrap it up in that foil, put some type of oil on it, and bake it for 45 minutes or 30 minutes. And I'm telling you, I figured out I can bake anything. What I can't bake, I can put on the stove and just let it simmer for a little bit. And I'm talking about anything, like any of your meats, any of your vegetables, you've got a meal, you know?
Yeah.
I love like we've become really, I love eggs now. Like egg is part of almost every meal. And I think I figured out every way to make an egg.
That's awesome.
So yeah, but it's just that's what works and it's quick. Usually I'm done, with what I'm gonna eat in about 15 or 20 minutes,
Wow,
you know?
that's great. So simple, something everybody can do.
Yeah.
Maybe you noticed this too. I noticed that when I really more aggressively cut out sugar, that my taste buds really changed. And you're right, like the simple black pepper and salt is so tasty. You don't need tons and tons of spices and different flavor profiles. You can make things taste really good with very few ingredients.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, and yeah, over time you bump it up, right? You're gonna add in some stuff that you think you like all fancy, but yeah, but but yeah, that I mean, I found that that's where I started, it was just like basic stuff. So
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome advice. Tell us a little bit about the company you started.
oh, it's so funny to me because the sugar mode off is a part of me literally getting through my thesis. Let me just say the human rights and social justice falls up under the category of liberal studies. And so every year we were kind of made or forced in a way to like demonstrate like what our skill set was. So for example, there were artists, you know, there were people so they could paint or they could like dance or they could, or some people were they I think as a way to try to make sure that we immersed ourselves in our learning, they gave us an opportunity to, hey, display. So what I noticed about me, and it's so funny when I think about it now, is I think for every project I could turn in, there was always a t-shirt. Like the t-shirt was like, I think if my teachers were to really think, they would laugh because they're like, yeah, she did give me a t-shirt. So really like at the end, when I defended my thesis, I was just thinking like, well, for one, I had worn the t-shirt at home. I made it at home. It was just something that I used it to tell my family, like, get away from me. I'm not doing sugar today. I want you to know where I stand, but also like, you remember like the Superwoman. You remember the little, you probably don't, you're young, but we used to have those little underoos. And so you put that on and you really for a moment felt like Superwoman. I did, you
That's
know.
awesome.
And so and I love t-shirts. I love people when they wear t-shirts, like I'm always a t-shirt reader trying to figure out where people are from and all that kind of stuff and making connections through t-shirts. So I said, as a part of my, I guess, way to earn a real A, at the end of the presentation, I was like, let me just make the professors a couple of t-shirts. And I did. And so they were like, oh, that's so cool. Thank you. And I was like, wait, well, I also had to do like a capstone at the end and just like present at at kind of like the fair when everybody's doing their presentation. I was like, okay, I want people to come to my table, and the way I'm going to make them come to my table is I'm going to tell them they can get a free t-shirt if they can just listen to my spiel, right?
It's
So
awesome.
so of course I gave away all of the t-shirts that day. And I thought it was kind of cool because I'm like, you know what? I've kind of locked a person in for like 2 minutes to listen to me about sugar. And it worked. Yeah, they're gonna listen for 2 minutes. They're gonna free t-shirt. So um fast forward, I think literally I remember going back to the t-shirt shop and the owner of the t-shirt, she was just like, what are you doing with these t-shirts? I was like, I am like giving them away to people who will listen to me, talk about sugar. And she was like, do you realize how many t-shirts you've printed? And I was like, no, I just know that I keep, playing with them and they, they're kind of fun. So she went back and she's like, you've done over 100 t-shirts. And she said, I think it's time for you to do something different with the t-shirts. I was like, okay. So she had advised me, like, you just need to set up, we need to set you up a little shop, and people can just order from here. That way you're not carrying t-shirts in your trunk all the time and just giving them away, And so, but on a real level, like I think all of that was just the universe's way of just saying, girl, you'll talk about sugar anywhere to anybody. Like, and I didn't think like at that time that I was like really gonna be like into an awareness thing, until like Benton going through her course, she kind of forces you to think about what you're gonna do, like for the world. And I don't think she ever gave us a lecture or told us that, but she really made me think like, what am I going to do with this? But aside from that, going back to, the way I was raised and the fact that I love educating and the fact that I'm a nurse by nature, I'm going to care and have concern to be. So how am I going to put all of these things together and make it worthwhile and make it something? So, and that's where the t-shirt came from. So, and the sugar mode off is literally just the t-shirts and me really just saying, I'm going to take a stance if no one else does and just say, hey, I want to promote sugar awareness in communities of color because I do believe it saves lives. The research tells us that, so
Wow.
that's where that starts.
Have you been able to reach out and help assist other healthcare workers? I feel like that's such a necessary and demanding job, and we need we need people in that field, but they obviously need to be taking care of themselves in order to be able to show up and do their job the way that they want to. How has that kind of worked as far as like any coworkers?
You know what? I love individual coaching. And that's what I do at work. If someone asks, which a lot of people have asked, like, what are you doing? Like, and I'll just tell them, look, this is what I'm doing. This is how I eat. This is how I do this. And alongside of that, I've started a small private Facebook group called Sisters Breaking the Bonds of Sugar. And that's really taken off, and it's doing more than I thought it would. I was hoping for like 6 people when I first started, and that was in February, and now we're up to like 209, I think.
Wow, it's
So
amazing.
yeah, and it's just really, like, I don't just try to put it out there like, hey, I really know about addiction. I'm like, I really want you to know about awareness. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want you to know that the American Heart Association has those numbers out there for us to follow. I want you to know that there's a difference between table sugar and the sugar that's in the soda. So yeah, so we're just having dialogue discussions, guest speakers, and just using that space to connect with one another in sisterhood, in history, and in health, or as it relates to sugar.
That is beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, that's so cool. What is your vision for the future? Where do you see that going?
I'm so strong about like that. It's quite possible that I can't change anyone's life, but I just, if more women can just know, I know that information will saturate through their families like it has mine. So the fact that I can get a daughter to say, yeah, I'm pretty sure your grandkids won't have a soda. That to me means everything. And I know that that's huge, for not just, you know, me, but it's huge for our family. And so I just see it, if it grows, I will be grateful. But at the same time, I'm also just really focused on like the information, just the awareness. And so it's hard for me to tell you like what it's going to look like down the road, because honestly, if we talk about 6 months ago, I didn't think I'd be where I am today. you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
so it's hard for me to do that. And that's just how it is.
hmm
To be on your show today is a big thing. So that's just, and so however I can be used in the way that I can promote awareness in communities of color, that's where I hope to be,
that's
you
great.
know.
Yeah, that's great. Tell us a little bit about the sugar system itself. How does that work, and how do you work with your people one on one?
So it's hard to work with it, but you just give them the same things that were given to me. Give them a food list. Call it a challenge if you want to. You and I know realistically, it's not a challenge. You can call it a 21-day challenge, but the truth is it's a marathon. You're probably going to skin your knee, bruise yourself, and then you're going to have to figure out how you're going to get off of it. But that's where the dialogue comes in. Like, that's where we create questions for each other and saying, hey, I know for sure I'm going to go out tonight and I'm going to have a drink. What do you think? Well, if you're asking me, like, sugar mode off is going to tell you sugar mode off. But if you're going to have a drink, we're going to talk about, first of all, you're not going to shame yourself. You're going to come back tomorrow to this group and we're going to say, how did you feel? How did you feel? So it's really just letting people know it's a safe space to at least progressively get better with coming off of sugar, or at least heighten the awareness around sugar.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. I think that support is so important. The groups that can gather together with a common goal, at a time when we can't really hang out in person, it's so great to be able to develop those online communities and really offer our support and help people out. Because people are confused and they have questions, and it's very difficult for them. But once they find the right people, I think it's really great to kind of share that message around and build that community and awareness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
interesting. What are you optimistic for the future?
You know, Casey and Bethany, I'm so honored to be here. And that the fact that it's not all about me, but I know that that sometimes change comes with a person who kind of figured things out and is not afraid to tell everybody. I'm optimistic about just growing in courage, and and that that really, like, this is a health thing, and that people will make those connections for themselves, and that they too will have the changes that I've been, my family's been able to see. So that is, it's pretty simple for me. I think where we can just be truthful, people are going to heal, you know, and long term, I really just, if we talked about like me having a real, like, imaginary station going on in my head, I just think when I feel better and you feel better, I mean, how can we go wrong? You know what I'm saying? Like it's just, I just think we can communicate better.
Yeah.
You can understand me better, I can help you more, so you can help me more, so that's just the way I see it, just on simple terms.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 2020 was such a difficult year for so many reasons. And boy, the racial inequalities that have come out of this are really daunting. And I think it's hard for us to know what we can do to help. What would you like us to know to be able to move this message forward, both socially, racially, and also with nutrition?
Mm, I think we've all got to at least understand that the past is ugly, you know, that it happened. Let's first of all put that out there. That crap happened, you know. Um, but we don't have to use that destruction to keep us in the same space. Like, we really could turn this thing around and use it for instruction. I really believe that.
Mm,
So um, I think we're all having to really reckon with language and our our position. I mean, my kids teach me stuff, that I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. They're like, well, you're Miss Human Rights Advocate. And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know everything though. I don't know. I don't know the challenges that you're having right now. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just think it's just we've just got to just really deal with the truth. Don't try to push mine away. I need that truth. You know what
yeah.
I'm saying?
Mm,
So that's the way I like to deal with the truth that's on the table, and then I can help myself better, and you to help me if you want to help me.
that's fantastic. I love that. I think that understanding and listening piece is so critical. And yeah, we're optimistic too that we can turn the page on this and have a much better outcome in the future. What is one simple thing you would want somebody to take away from this conversation to give them hope, to give them peace, and to help them live a better life?
I think look at your food. Look at your food first. It's something that we do every day. Like, for many of us, we do it probably, what some people eat every 3 to 4 hours. It's something that we do all the time. But look, just pay attention to your food. And I really think that the food will begin to change everything around you, everything that you're connected to. So I really think just pay attention to your food.
That's great advice. This has been such an awesome conversation. Where would you like people to go to find your work?
To find my work, you can go to, I'm on Facebook at Sugar Mode Off. And then not very good with Instagram, or let's just be real, I'm not really good with social media right now. But I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But yeah, Instagram is Sugar Mode Off as well. And if you want to email me, I love responding to emails at sugarmodeoff@gmail.com.
That's great. Yeah, we will link to all of that in the show notes. The t-shirts are awesome. I have to say, like, seeing you wear them, they're really striking, and you wear it well, and you can tell how proud you are. Giant smile on your face, like you can tell that you're living a great life on the other side of, sugar addiction, and it's so cool. And I just think it's such a wonderful message that you have, and it's wonderful that you decided to not just keep it to yourself, like you said, to go out and share it with the world, to be really proud of it. And I think it's very empowering, and I encourage everybody to go over there and check out your work and buy a t-shirt, and they're great. They're really wonderful. Shun Foreman, absolutely. Shun Foreman, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for your time and for your work. We're very grateful for you and everything that you do.
It's an honor to be here, Case and Beth. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.